Today, we're diving into something truly intense. For the first time on this channel, I feel compelled to warn you. If you're sensitive to tragedies and react strongly to them, it might be best to skip this video. For those who choose to stay, I'm glad to welcome you to my channel, where I occasionally explore real crimes and strange phenomena. If this is your kind of thing, please subscribe, and let's get started. The Japanese have long been known for their dedication to work. In the 1970s, they coined the term karoshi, which refers to deaths caused by exhaustion from overwork. You've probably heard of it. Managers push employees to take on tasks beyond their duties, encouraging them to arrive early while frowning upon leaving on time. When deadlines loom, sleeping at the workplace becomes a common practice, despite its negative impact on society and the collective mental health of Japan's workforce. This unhealthy tradition persists to this day. You know, people sometimes say a bad experience is still experience. It lets you analyze your mistakes, move forward, and keep in mind what you've learned. But some mistakes are so devastating that all you can do is watch in horror as everything slowly falls apart. In 1999, a mix of negligence, corporate greed, and complete disregard for worker safety led to unimaginable suffering for one man. On the morning of September 30, 1999, technicians Hisashi Uchi, his colleague Masato Shinohara, and their supervisor Yutaka Yokokawa arrived at the Tokaimura nuclear power plant. It was just another workday for them. I'm no chemist or physicist, but I'll explain it as I understand it. One of the plant's units was used to process uranium, which was then turned into fuel rods for other nuclear stations and reactors. There wasn't specially trained staff for this task. It was handled by whichever technicians were available. The procedure was strictly outlined: which tank to pour what into, how much to mix, and for how long. 3 years earlier, the company had altered the official process, allowing uranium nitrate solution to be prepared manually in stainless steel buckets instead of using a designated dissolving tank, as was done before. This was, to put it mildly, illegal and went against government regulations. However, it had never caused accidents because the uranium concentration was always kept extremely low. That day, when the 3 workers arrived, the plant was already 2 days behind schedule on delivering nuclear fuel rods. The company pressured employees to finish the procedure as quickly as possible, so the technicians took it a step further. They mixed the uranium nitrate solution in buckets and poured it directly into the precipitation tank. On top of that, they used a uranium concentration 7 times higher than what was previously allowed, all to produce fuel faster. As you can imagine, this led to tragic consequences. Around 10:35 a.m., Uchi and Shinohara were mixing uranium powder in buckets, using 7 times the permissible amount. Uchi leaned against the precipitation tank, assisting Shinohara, who stood on a platform pouring the mixture. Suddenly, a gamma radiation alarm blared. Uchi, Shinohara, and Yokokawa realized they'd made a terrible mistake. Reports say all 3 saw a flash of blue light, the Vavilov-Cherenkov effect. This happens when massive energy is released, creating a shockwave similar to the sonic boom of a supersonic jet or a bullet. It confirmed an uncontrolled nuclear chain reaction had begun. The room was irradiated due to an uncontrolled nuclear fission reaction. Hisashi Uchi, positioned closest to the explosion, received the highest dose of radiation. Masato Shinohara, standing nearby, absorbed a slightly lower amount. Yutaka Yokokawa, seated at a computer several meters away, sustained the least exposure. To provide context, the internationally recognized annual radiation safety limit for an individual is 20 millisieverts. A dose considered lethal stands at 5,000 millisieverts. In a single moment, Uchi was bombarded with 17,000 millisieverts, 3 times the fatal threshold. Shinohara received 10,000 millisieverts, while Yokokawa took in 3,000. The 3 men immediately attempted to flee, but their escape was short-lived. Uchi and Shinohara quickly experienced excruciating burning pain coursing through their bodies, accompanied by nausea and severe shortness of breath. Yokokawa felt effects too, though they were noticeably milder. Uchi stumbled into the locker room, where he vomited violently and collapsed, unconscious, onto the floor. The facility was evacuated without delay to contain the damage and prevent further irradiation of other workers. Uchi, Shinohara, and Yokokawa were swiftly transported to the National Institute of Radiological Sciences in Chiba. However, given the gravity of Uchi's condition, he was soon transferred to the University of Tokyo Hospital, which boasted more qualified personnel and cutting-edge medical equipment. On the evening of September 30th, Uchi arrived at the University of Tokyo Hospital. Carried in on a stretcher, he was escorted to a private room in the intensive care unit. A nurse assigned to monitor him observed that, aside from a swollen hand and skin that appeared freshly burned, he seemed surprisingly well. He was alert, talkative, and even friendly. One nurse remarked that, in her opinion, he looked stable enough to go home that very day. Unbeknownst to her, this marked the beginning of one of the most horrific deaths in history. Upon learning Uchi had been involved in a nuclear accident, the medical team conducted a bone marrow analysis to pinpoint the extent of the damage. The results left them stunned. In the human body, countless cells die daily but are naturally replaced over time. This process relies on chromosomes, which carry the blueprint for cellular regeneration. If chromosomes cease to function, survival becomes impossible. Uchi's chromosomes, ravaged by the radiation blast, resembled a chaotic soup in the samples. Some had shattered into fragments, like glass splintered in all directions, making identification nearly impossible. Others had fused abnormally, defying their natural structure. The genetic instructions for cell replication and repair were obliterated, rendering his chromosomes useless. The doctors were incredulous. If the damage was so catastrophic, why, as the nurses reported, did Uchi appear healthy and in good spirits? The medical team concluded that Uchi was in a walking ghost phase, a deceptive period of apparent health that can last hours or days, depending on the body's response to radiation poisoning. Before the explosion, his cells had still been operational, so the vitality he displayed upon arriving at the hospital was temporary. Once the radiation poisoning fully manifested, everything would change. In simpler terms, he was a ticking time bomb, and his nightmarish suffering was imminent. Beyond the loss of chromosome functionality, his white blood cell count dropped to dangerously low levels, leaving him highly susceptible to infections and diseases. To address this critical vulnerability, Dr. Kazuhiko Maekawa, the lead physician overseeing his case, ordered Uchi's transfer to a sterile room. This environment would shield him from external pathogens and bacteria continuously. By eliminating the risk of infections, Dr. Maekawa recognized that giving Uchi any chance of survival required supplying his body with healthy chromosomes to restart cell production and self-repair. He decided to employ an experimental cancer treatment known as hematopoietic stem cell transplantation. This procedure involved harvesting healthy bone marrow cells from a donor and transplanting them into Uchi. In an ideal scenario, these cells would integrate into his bone marrow, enabling it to generate healthy cells once more. However, this cutting-edge method, advanced for its time, came with a caveat. The donor's immune system had to be compatible. Fortunately, Uchi's sister was identified by the doctors as a suitable match, and the operation proceeded. Uchi's family was deeply concerned, aware that he was the first person in the world to undergo this treatment under such extreme circumstances. They understood the devastating toll radiation had taken on his body. Dr. Maekawa ensured the family could visit him daily, recognizing that false hope would only complicate an already dire situation. He wanted them to witness the changes firsthand and prepare for the worst possible outcome. Meanwhile, Uchi himself seemed oblivious to the severity of his condition. One nurse recalled him saying, "I thought I'd be able to leave the hospital in a month or so, but it'll take longer, won't it?" Later, he inquired about his exposure, asking, "When you're hit with that much radiation, is there a risk of developing leukemia or something else?" Uchi didn't realize he wouldn't live long enough for leukemia to even become a possibility. Over time, physical symptoms of radiation poisoning began to emerge. Having lost its elasticity, his skin started peeling away. Medical staff noticed that removing adhesive tape from his body tore off large chunks of skin, prompting them to abandon its use entirely and avoid attaching anything to him. Soon after, his lungs began filling with fluid, making breathing laborious. At this stage, movement and speech became arduous, yet his spirit remained remarkably resilient. He continued to smile and told his wife, "I love you, a moment the nurses found deeply touching. Before long, the fluid buildup in his lungs became constant, and Uchi lost the ability to breathe on his own. The doctors opted to place him on artificial respiration. An endoscopy later revealed that his intestinal membrane had died and was sloughing off. This mucus lining is vital for absorbing nutrients, aiding digestion, and protecting against microbial infections. Without it, the body cannot retain nutrients from food or absorb water. This loss of fluid and sustenance can lead to dehydration or starvation, ultimately resulting in death. Yet, as it turned out, death would have been far preferable to the ordeal Uchi was about to endure in the coming days. To understand what went wrong, Dr. Maekawa conducted another test. He discovered that the healthy chromosomes transplanted into Uchi had now been corrupted by the radiation still present in his system. Despite every effort, his body was too severely damaged by the initial blast, and this damage extended even to the newly introduced cells. This meant Uchi had reverted to a state of irreversible decline. The initial optimism of the medical team faded as they grappled with the reality of his condition. The stem cell transplant, a desperate bid to save him, had failed under the overwhelming influence of radiation. Uchi's case was unprecedented, pushing the boundaries of medical science at the time. His body, once a functioning system, was now a battleground where radiation had claimed victory. The nurse's early observations of his cheerfulness became a haunting contrast to the suffering that unfolded. His family, watching helplessly, could only cling to the moments they shared with him, knowing each visit might be their last. Uchi's story, marked by this tragic progression, remains a stark reminder of the human cost of nuclear mishaps. Dr. Maekawa was devastated. He knew he had to deliver this horrific news to a family already clinging to hope. Meanwhile, Uchi began suffering severe gastrointestinal issues. He lost control of his bowels, experiencing relentless, round-the-clock diarrhea. Additionally, his sloughing intestinal membrane caused internal bleeding. He was losing blood rapidly, forcing Dr. Maekawa to administer transfusions, sometimes up to 10 times a day. Consider this: they constantly injected fentanyl to ease his pain, but his skin and flesh kept blistering and peeling away. His body could no longer retain fluids, putting him at risk of complete dehydration. Reports indicate he lost 8 to 10 liters of fluid daily, which had to be replenished via IV drips. In a desperate attempt to preserve his remaining skin, medical staff wrapped nearly his entire body in gauze, hoping it would hold the skin in place and help retain moisture. It didn't work. The bandages soaked through with blood within hours. The fluid loss became so severe that doctors had to measure it precisely to determine how much to pump back in. At that point, Uchi's condition was hopeless. A nurse recorded his words, "No more. I'm going home. Please stop." In a delirious state, he reportedly called out for his mother. Due to his skin losing elasticity, his eyelids could no longer close. It said he wept blood from the intense pain. Doctors administered heavy doses of sedatives to help him sleep and dull the agony. Dr. Maekawa spoke with Uchi's family, explaining that his condition was unlikely to improve and would likely worsen. The family begged him to do everything possible to save his life. The only option left was a massive skin graft using lab-grown tissue. Dr. Maekawa hoped that if the skin took, it might retain fluid and buy time to explore other treatments. Unfortunately, due to the immense fluid loss through his exposed body, the grafted skin failed to adhere and quickly sloughed off. 2 months had passed since Uchi's admission. He'd undergone repeated blood transfusions, skin grafts, and stem cell transplants. He relied on artificial respiration. His skin had rotted away, his lidless eyes couldn't close even in sleep, and blood oozed from his intestines. He endured constant, searing pain, yet he remained alive. The excessive blood loss and frequent transfusions produced a secondary effect. His heart raced at over 120 beats per minute, akin to a marathon runner's. The strain on his heart muscle was catastrophic. Then, it stopped. Without a do not resuscitate order, the medical team was obligated to act. They performed CPR, and his heart restarted, only to stop again soon after. They administered cardiac stimulants. After 3 cycles of stopping and restarting, his heart settled into a steady but excessively rapid rhythm. These repeated cardiac arrests took a toll on his brain and kidneys, and his overall organ function began to decline. When his family visited, he didn't recognize them. It's doubtful he comprehended anything by then. His survival now depended entirely on medical equipment. His immune cells had become abnormal, attacking the few healthy white blood cells he had left. Within a short time, he had none remaining. Even a common cold could have killed him in hours. On the 81st night of his hospitalization, Dr. Mikawa gathered Uchi's family. He informed them that saving Hisashi Uchi was impossible. If his heart stopped again, resuscitation should not be attempted. The family agreed and signed a do not resuscitate order, hoping to spare him further suffering. On the 83rd day of this nightmare, Hisashi Uchi's heart ceased beating, and he passed away. It's hard to pinpoint who bears the blame in this tragedy. Naturally, the primary fault lies with the plant where Uchi worked. But should we fault the doctors who exhausted every method to save him? Or his family, who desperately wished for his recovery and grasped at any chance? I don't know. What I do know is that no one deserves such a fate. The more people learn about this, the less likely it is to happen again. What's your take? Feel free to share your thoughts.